Okay, well, thanks for coming. My name's Alex Warren. I'm the creator of the Quest text adventure engine, which you can find at textadventures.co.uk, and you can also contact me on those addresses down there. Textadventures.co.uk is where you can go to create, play and share a text adventure game online. You can download the Quest software for Windows, or you can actually use it now entirely in your web browser. There's a beta of the web version of the editor, so you can use that on your Mac, Linux, even on your iPad. It works quite well. And when you've created a game, you can upload it to the website and share the link around, and people can then play that game online, and they don't need to download anything. It just works straight in the web browser. Again, works great on iPads and iPhones and things like that. So what I'm going to do for the next little while, I'm going to show you a quick demonstration of what Quest looks like and how it works. And then I'm going to take a step back from that, I suppose, and kind of then try to really explain why you should care about any of that, why text adventures are actually important and relevant nowadays, and a bit of history about why Quest exists and where it's going in the future. So I'll start off, that's Quest here. I'll just show you very quickly a Quest game, just so you can see what a text adventure looks like. I imagine you all know what a text adventure looks like, but it's also quite important to show you how the default layout of a Quest game actually differs slightly from the text adventure games that you might recognise from the 1980s. So this is a very simple text adventure game actually that's been written. It was actually written by a teacher for the benefit of introducing text adventure games / interactive fiction to his year 8 class, I think it was. So it's designed for kids of about 11 and 12 years old. The thing I like about this game is because it's so simple, it's actually very easy for children to pick up. Most children have never heard of text adventure games, of course, because they weren't alive when text adventures were popular. And in fact, most people that I speak to have never heard of text adventure games either. And when I say I work on a text adventure system, they say, oh, well, what's that? And I say, well, it's kind of like interactive stories, kind of. And they say, oh, like choose your own adventure books, I love them. And I have to say, sorry, actually, no, it's a bit different from that. You have to kind of type stuff in and, you know, it's terrible. So the thing I like about this game, it's very easy for children to pick up. And they don't need to really understand the kinds of things that they have to type in. I think one of the problems that text adventures typically had back in the 80s was that players would come along and they've just got a screen of text and then they have to type something in. Well, what do you type? You type in, hello, what do I do? And then it might just come up and give you an error message. The Quest engine tries to make text-based games a bit more accessible to people who have not played them before, and it does that in a couple of simple ways. The first is by adding hyperlinks into the game here. So, for example, we can see a car, I can click on the car, and then I can see various things that I might then do on that car. So I can try looking under the car, for example, and see what happens when I do that. Also on the right hand side here are various panes that give us some information about the game. If we pick anything up, it will be added to our inventory up on the top right here. So like a key fob has just appeared from looking under the car, and so I can look at the key fob and then I can take it, and it appears in my inventory in the top right there. And we've also got a compass here which lets us move around the game instead of having to type in anything. So if I go north, then I'm in a different location, and you can see there that the author has included an image that is displayed at that point. And that's another thing about Quest games, is they're trying to kind of add in some of those elements that were probably missing from the old sort of console window games, just because old console window games couldn't display pictures. In Quest you can have sound effects, you can even embed YouTube videos if you like. You can do whatever you like, really. So that's a simple example of a game, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. I'll just show you the editor quickly now, just to give you an idea of how quickly and easily you can get started with Quest. But I don't want you to kind of take from that the impression that it's just quite a simplistic kind of system, because there's a lot of flexibility behind it. And also because it's free and open source software, you can actually use it as a base to then build up, some quite complicated things. So I'm just going to go onto the Create tab here, and I'm going to create a new game. I'm just going to call it Test, which already exists. Test is quite a common game. I must have made about 1,000 games called Test in my life. So this is the editor here. On the left-hand side, you can see all the things that exist in the game, and as you click around in the game, then the right-hand side changes. So it's fairly simple and intuitive. There's not a lot in a blank game to start with. Really the only important things are this room that you can see here, and then there's a player that's inside that room. Often when I'm demonstrating Quest, I turn on something called simple mode, which just cuts away some of the more advanced functionality. So I'll just do that just to make it look a bit simpler. And yeah, if I just click on play here, then hopefully something happens. Here we go, you are in a room, and that's all that happens in an empty Quest game. And I can't really do very much. I can start typing in things, you know, look, it says you're in a room, inventory, not carrying anything. About the only thing you can do is look at yourself, and it just has a default. You can change anything in the game, obviously. So if the player is particularly ugly in your game, you can change that if you like. One of the kind of principles of the editor is that everything is supposed to be quite intuitive. If you've not made any kind of game before, you can really just kind of click around the obvious things and build a game up from there. You don't need to have any prior programming experience. You can just kind of work things out as you go along. And I've run workshops with kids of as young as 8 using this software, so I know that it's quite intuitive to use. So because I normally do these kinds of demos to groups of kids, I often have a demonstration game that I set up which is set in a school, which is pretty boring. I haven't thought of any other topics for an example game, so I'm going to use the same demo that I always do. So I'm going to rename that room to classroom. The player starts in that room, and I'm going to add another object into that room. Now everything in Quest is an object. That includes rooms themselves are objects, and also characters in the game are objects too. So I'm going to add a teacher into this classroom. I can make Quest say sensible default messages about the teacher by telling it what the type is. So instead of an inanimate object, I'm going to say this teacher is a male character. So Quest will refer to it as him when it's giving its default responses. I might add another object into the classroom as well, just a desk or something like that. And if I play that game now, then I'm in a classroom, I can see a teacher and a desk, but I've not actually set anything up about these objects. So if I click on look at teacher, there's nothing in this game. There's just default descriptions. So in any text adventure game that you create, you obviously should always have some nice descriptions because it's supposed to be an interactive story. And if the player is just going around and there's nothing out of the ordinary in the game, then well, why the hell are they playing the game, I suppose? So I would just go to here I can give a text description, and I might say for the desk in this case, this is a desk made from the finest laminated MDF. That was what all the desks in my school were made from. And that's the description that would come up when I looked at a desk. So far, pretty boring really. There's not much we can actually do in this game. We can't even go to any other rooms in it. So I'm just going to add in another room into this game. It's going to be called a canteen. And I'm going to add in a couple of things into the canteen, which I'm going to use to set up a very basic puzzle in a minute. So in this canteen, for some reason, there's only one bowl of chips sitting around in the canteen, and there's also going to be a plate of salad as well. If I play this game now, there's actually no way for me to get into the canteen because I need to add an exit, which is how you actually get between rooms. So I'll just quickly add one of those. In the classroom, I'll go to this exits tab here, and I'm going to go and add an exit east from the classroom. Notice I've got some quite nonsensical choices in here. I can actually create an exit east from the canteen, from the classroom rather, to the bowl of chips. There's nothing to stop you doing that in a game because everything is an object. The classroom and the canteen and the bowl of chips are all objects, and exits just create links between objects. So I'm not aiming to create a surrealist kind of Dali-esque adventure game here, so I'm going to create an exit that goes from the classroom to the canteen, and it's also going to create another exit in the opposite direction for me so I can go back again. Now, in this puzzle, I want to make it so that the player can pick up the plate of salad because salads are healthy. But because this school has quite a draconian healthy eating policy, I'm going to say they can't pick up the bowl of chips unless they're already carrying the plate of salad, because because they've got to have a balanced diet. So I want them to always be able to pick up the plate of salad, so I'm going to go to this inventory tab here, and I'm just going to say this object can be taken. That's fine. The bowl of chips, I'm actually going to run a script instead of just saying that the object can be taken. So to do that, I'm going to choose this run script option from here. Now scripts are really the power behind all of Quest. In fact, most of Quest's default functionality is written in Quest's own scripting language, which actually gives you then a lot of power in terms of if you want to change any of the default behaviour, if you want to completely customise the parser, or if you want to make it so that different objects were visible at different times when maybe you wouldn't expect that to be the case in a normal text adventure. You can change pretty much everything that Quest does through scripts. So scripts are really a fundamental part of how Quest works. And scripts are also how you can use Quest to kind of gradually introduce programming concepts to children, and I think that's quite a nice strength about it, because we've already created a game and we haven't had to use any scripts at all yet. But as soon as you want to add a puzzle or do something interesting in the game, then you're going to have to start adding scripts in. But you don't need to memorise any syntax or look up any commands to start adding scripts into your game, because you've got a whole list that appears here, and you can search through that by typing in the box here. So I mean, there's script commands for just showing pictures and stuff like that. So if in this case the player went to pick up the bowl of chips and we wanted to say no chips for you, and a big sign with a line through it of a bowl of chips saying chips are forbidden, then you could do that just by adding in scripts to show that picture and display that message. What we're going to do instead though is add in an if script, because we want different things to happen depending on whether the player has picked up the salad or not. So I'm going to add in if here, and I can choose from this drop down the various conditions that we're going to look at. So I'm going to say if player is carrying the plate of salad, then I can say these chips will be a great accompaniment to that salad, and I can move the chips then into the inventory. There's another command for that somewhere. There we go. And I'm going to add an else as well there, because I want something else to happen if the player is not carrying the plate of salad, and if that's going to say you may think you have free will, but you can't have chips on their own here. So let's just test that all those changes that I just made work. So I'm in a classroom, I can see a teacher on a desk, and I can go east. I can go east, and I'm in the canteen now, and I can see the bowl of chips and the plate of salad. Let's try taking the bowl of chips. No chips for me. Let's try taking the salad first. There's my salad, and it's now in my inventory. Let's try taking the bowl of chips again. Yum, 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 tasty chips. So that's basically a very quick flying overview of how you create a game in Quest, and how you can start introducing kind of programming to people by stealth almost. And it's worth noting actually, yeah, there's a full sort of programming language behind this. I mean, everything that I've shown you so far, we haven't looked at any kind of coding, syntax or anything like that. If I just come out of the simple mode again, one of the options that's available is this code view, and this shows, it's an XML file, it has all of the objects and attributes of those objects that are in the game, and you can see down here, that's the script that we just created, and it looks pretty much like a script in any other language like JavaScript or C# or something like that, very kind of similar kind of look to it. And we've managed to create that even if we didn't know that we had to use semicolons to denote blocks of scripts and all that kind of thing. So that is how Quest works. Let me move on now just to put that into a bit of context really, as in why that's all very nice, but why should you actually care? Which I will do after this other slide, which is just to tell you that once you've created your game, you can upload it to the website, as I said before, but also another thing that we can do now is actually turn those games into apps, so you can play them on your phone or tablet. That's a screenshot of the first game that was released there, Escape from Byron Bay. It's available on the App Store and on Google Play for Android, and even for Windows Phone if you're one of the 3 people in the country that has one of those. And that's where you can go to find out about them. So just a bit of context, I suppose, about where text adventures came from. I mean, I'm talking at an adventure game conference here, so I probably don't need to go into this in too much detail, but obviously text adventures come from a time before computers could display any kind of graphics whatsoever, so it was really the only kind of game that was possible given the constraints of technology at the time. So here's a screenshot of Zork, which is by a company called Infocom, who are really synonymous with text adventure games in the 1980s. And there were other games they released like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is probably, that and Zork are probably the biggest selling text adventure games. I would really love for there to be like a modern equivalent of something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If there was some way I could collaborate with a famous, comedy writer of some kind to create like a modern version of this, then that would be my dream come true. So if you know anybody, send them along. Later on in the 80s, Infocom moved with technology slightly, and even they were experimenting. They had games where it split the screen and you had graphics at the top of it. And one thing that I didn't actually realise until I was putting together the slides for this presentation is actually Infocom's final game called Journey didn't actually have a text-based, type things in parser at all. You could actually just kind of click this. It looks slightly confusing to me down here, so I don't know really how you would actually go about using it. But they were experimenting with different kinds of...
In a way, it was a lot like the LucasArts interface, that the commands that you had were available on the screen.
Yeah.
And it was very much a branching story. There were lots of endings, some good, some bad.
Yeah. So even Infocom were kind of moving away and experimenting with what a text adventure looked like and how it actually worked. But then Infocom, well, they made some sort of business mistakes and started to try and create a database of all things, and then they collapsed in 1989, and that was really the end of commercial text adventures. And if you want to know more about that story, then Get Lamp is a fascinating and brilliant documentary. I recommend it even if you think you don't actually care about text adventures, because it's just a really nicely put together documentary. So what happened after that? Well, as with so many things, after something is commercially successful, then there's always groups of enthusiastic amateurs who will kind of carry on things so that nothing ever quite dies. So in the 90s you get the rise of systems such as TADS, which is pretty much a programming language that looks like C++, but specifically designed for text adventure games. And the most famous example is probably Inform. That's a screenshot of its website with its bizarre version numbering scheme there. And Inform is quite impressive when you look at it, I think, for the first time, because it has this kind of natural language syntax to programming. And I think a lot of people think, well, hey, I can speak English, so therefore I can program. And I think that's possibly a bit of a nasty trick that Inform plays. And certainly a lot of the feedback that I have got is that, yeah, Inform looks amazing at first glance, and it is magic, because there's nothing really that tries to do anything like that in the world, but it's actually quite hard to work out the specific incantations that you've got to type in to get it to do what you want. So Quest comes at it from a slightly different design. And so during sort of the 90s and noughties, text adventures have still continued to be created, and following very much from that kind of Infocom tradition of some text and then you write stuff in, and this is an example of 905, which is a very good game. And I think the thing I really like about 905 is it's the only kind of game, it can only work as a text adventure actually. If you did this as a graphic adventure, you would spoil the twist in it. I don't really want to give it away too much. I mean, ostensibly it's a game about being late for work, but if you played it, you'll know that's not quite the full truth. And it also couldn't work as just a book, sort of static fiction, I don't think. So I think the interactivity and feeling that you are this character is quite an important aspect of how that actually works as a game. But I think the thing that kind of disappoints me about Inform and that kind of thing is they're kind of maintaining this tradition of the old Infocom games, but even Infocom were experimenting with what a text adventure looked like and how you interacted with it. And I don't see that so much when I look at games that have kind of come out of the amateur scene, I suppose. This is a text adventure that I quite like that came out a couple of years ago called Champion of Guitars. It's basically a text adventure version of Guitar Hero. Look at TV, a red circle slides down the screen. Press red. A green circle slides down the screen. Press green. It's quite funny, but it's also kind of sad in a way, because I think it shows the attitude that people have towards text adventures, that they're kind of just a bit of a joke really. There's something to be enjoyed in an ironic fashion, like those novelty big stitch Christmas jumpers that everybody seems to be wearing now. I'm not kind of doing this because it's actually kind of good, but because like, ha ha ha, isn't it funny what games used to look like? And so I think, although I find this really funny, I also find it kind of sad in a way that, I think people are really kind of missing the opportunity that a kind of text-based interactive storytelling offers. It's just like text adventures were kind of acceptable in the 80s and they have no kind of relevance today, and I think that's just kind of sad. But I think that the time is coming now that actually interactive text-based games could have a bit of a renaissance really, and I think it's because we don't really allow text adventure games to actually develop yet. Text adventure games are actually still quite new, although most people think of them as quite old. This is a still image from a film which I should have on my notes here, but I couldn't actually get to see those at the same time as the slides. But it's from 1902. There's something about this picture which scares the absolute bejesus out of me. But I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that this is an image from a film that was created during the first 10 years of film, and yet films don't look anything like that now. And there's a 40-year gap, pretty much, between this film and this film, Citizen Kane. 40 years, and that was 40 years during which film was quite a mainstream entertainment format. So I think it's a mistake to think that text adventures don't have that much developing kind of still to do. A quote I really like about Orson Welles, and this was Orson Welles' first film as well. He was only 24, and let me read, I've got a note here. When asked where he got the confidence from as a first-time director to direct a film so radically different from contemporary cinema, he responded, from ignorance, sheer ignorance. No confidence to equal it. It's only when you know something about a profession that you are timid or careful. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as text adventures go. I think, to be honest, I've not really played that many text adventures from the 80s, and we'll see kind of where my take on it comes from in a minute. I just think there's a lot of exciting kind of possibilities, and it almost takes, I think, a bit of ignorance about text adventures to kind of think where they can go. So that's kind of my encouragement to you if you've not really played too many text adventures, and that I don't think that actually kind of matters, because I think everybody, can have a useful opinion on what an interactive story can look like, and you don't need to kind of follow the same model of sort of the 1980s Infocom games, because there's so much more, I believe, that they could do. Anyway, I've probably spoiled some of my subsequent slides now, but what I'm trying to show with this and this is that these are scenes that never happened. Also, me and Photoshop training never happened either. Why they look so great. But yeah, so the point I'm trying to make here is that actually it's only now, in the last couple of years, that finally we have devices which actually are perfect for playing text adventure games on. Back when you had to go to the mainframe or into your study, or maybe you had to hook your VIC-20 up to the TV and kick all your kids out of the lounge or whatever, that was not the time for text adventures to actually be a mainstream format, because you had to fire up one of these hulking great computers. It's only in the last couple of years that people are carrying around computers in their pockets, and that we have tablets and things like that. It's only in the last couple of years, and I think that's, I think that's a really exciting opportunity, and why we should look at this game form again. Anyway, so that's a kind of history of text adventures and why they should still be relevant. My own kind of personal story of text adventures actually begins here, which is a game that nobody has ever played, because nobody ever got to see it. It was written by my friend Martin, and he sent it to me. We were 12 years old at the time. It was about 1995. Yes, he was my best friend at school for about a year, and then he moved away just after we'd been at the same school for a year, and so we used to write letters to each other. Writing letters was what you used to do before we had email. And in those letters, because both of us were quite nerdy, I suppose, and we like nothing better to do of like a lunchtime and to spend it in the school IT lab just playing around with QBasic. And I think that's something that I'm kind of missing now, actually. For I think modern kids, they don't really have so much opportunity to program as they used to. I mean, I started on an Acorn Electron, and that was pretty much the only thing you could do, because you plug in an Acorn Electron, it beeps at you, and then you've got a prompt, and you've got to type something, and so the puzzle then is to figure out what to type in. And then when I got a PC and moved to DOS, you had QBasic on that still, and it was still nice and easy to make a game. And I think we're kind of missing that now to an extent. So anyway, this was a game that arrived in the post for me one day, and a letter from my friend Martin on a floppy disk. Floppy disks were like USB keys, but a lot smaller and flatter. Yeah, this was a game that he wrote. It's called Sid Snibble and the Curse of the Curry Stain. And I really hope he doesn't mind me showing this. He's probably forgotten that it even existed, to be honest. And in the game, you have to, well, as the name suggests, I suppose, you've woken up and you have to investigate why there's this mysterious yellow stain on your shirt. That's pretty much all there is to it. And it's a text adventure game, pretty much, although actually in that screen at the top there, you actually get one of those ASCII character ones, the smiley faces, and you can use the cursor keys to kind of move around. So you're not actually entirely typing in things, and so you can just walk around this map. If you go off to the left, there's more screens and stuff like that, and you can wander into different places. So we just wandered into the doctor's here, look at Doctor, he's bald and he's wearing a white coat. And so, it's quite a fun little game, and it was just coded using QBasic, and that's some of the code for it there. I hadn't looked at this for like 15 years, and I found some software called QB64 which lets you run all these old kind of things again. And I'm quite, there's apparently some instant elephant powder that appears at some point in this game, so quite keen to play this through again because it sounds quite fun. But this was how he coded it, and this was how then when I thought, oh, that's a good idea, Martin came up with the ideas, and then I would pretty much just do my own version of that same idea. So when we were sending text adventure games to each other, it was all just kind of this. It was not particularly sophisticated. It was, if the player has typed in this exact string, give T to Fred, then do some stuff and print some text. And that was how I wrote my games too. But anyway, time moved on, and I eventually got a PC that was actually capable of running Windows properly at last. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to write another text adventure game, but for Windows this time, and I can send it to my friends, and it'll just be, just to be quite fun. And I wonder, what could I do to actually make a text adventure game work on Windows, where everything's all about pointing and clicking stuff? So one summer holiday, 1998, I thought, well, I'm going to start writing a text adventure game, and so I did, using Visual Basic, which I just got hold of. And but I thought, I don't want to hard code this text adventure like we used to and end up with loads of code like that, which is horrible. What I'll do is I'll write my own little engine, and then I can just have like a text file or something that it can process, which will just, I can then write these text files and then load it into the engine, and I can churn out these crappy games, one a week or whatever, and just really annoy Martin, who would then have to play them all. So I wrote an engine called Quest, and I put it up on the internet, and I never actually got round to creating a game with it in the end, and I still haven't, 14 years later, created a game with Quest, much to my shame. But I put it up on the internet, and some people started playing around with it. This is a screenshot here from Quest 2 back in 2000, and actually you can see really the UI has not actually changed a whole lot in the last 12 years, which is, I suppose, something that I'm quite keen to change, because I think there's some more experimentation that could be done. And it had its own sort of visual editor. It was quite restrictive in a way. Eventually what happened with Quest version 5, which I released last year, was I actually completely rewrote it, because previous versions of Quest were getting a bit annoying to kind of update, and they were a bit kind of restrictive. So Quest 5, I put out last year, and for the first time it was free and open source, unlike previous versions of Quest, which had been something that I had tried to charge for and just basically earned beer money for. I put out Quest 5 and just kind of started to change the kind of focus of it a bit, I suppose. So whereas before it was just kind of a Windows platform for writing text adventures for Windows, the focus very much now is on creating games that sort of harness the power of HTML and JavaScript, I think, to do interesting things with the UI, which is why we've now got things like hyperlinks and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot more experimentation and exploration to be done. Hopefully, I've got 20 minutes now to show you a couple of experiments that people have done in Quest and some new kinds of UIs that I'm looking to sort of play with. So the first thing I want to show you actually is a new feature of Quest 5.3, which is a mapping feature. I think a lot of people, when they were playing text adventure games back in the 80s, might have had like a bit of squared paper or something like that just to kind of keep track of where they were. And I know that when I released the first Quest-powered app, Escape from Byron Bay, a lot of people actually found it quite confusing to kind of orientate themselves, because you're just kind of clicking north, east, west, south, and where have I ended up here? So the sort of mapping feature is an attempt to kind of make that a bit easier. And it's an entirely HTML5 based solution. It uses Canvas, so it looks exactly the same in the desktop version of Quest as it does in the web browser. And as you move around, it you can see where you are. It's pretty basic looking at the moment, but this is pretty much just the first release of this, and I just want to sort of see how people take to it, how they use it. It's got different layers in it, so in this room I can actually go up and then I'm kind of upstairs, and so I can sort of wander around upstairs here and go back down again. So I think it's not perfect, but I think there's some experimentation to be done there. The other experiment, well, this was one of the first things I did actually when I was just trying to convince myself, I suppose, that you could have a game and have it include some custom JavaScript or something to do interesting things with the UI. This was a game that I wrote myself to test that out. And actually, although I say I've never written a game in Quest, this is pretty much the only Quest game that I have ever written. And it's an experiment in split-screen text adventure game, which I'm not sure anybody has ever tried before, but it was fairly simple to do in Quest because I could just have some custom HTML for the user interface, and then I can just call back-end sort of normal Quest functions to do the right thing depending on which player the user is controlling. So on the left-hand side, well, where am I? I'm lying in a bed alone in a room with white walls, bright fluorescent light hanging loosely on the ceiling. On the other side of the screen here, if I type look, I can see the patient through the one-way mirror. So we kind of got patient lying on the bed and some kind of observer who's looking at him. So, you get a different response for the same command depending on who the player actually is. So if I look at bed and I'm the patient, then somebody's lying on the bed. If I look at the bed as the doctor or whoever it is, then I get a different response there. And about all you can do in this game is struggle to get up. If you get up 3 times, then you head for the door, and then the doctor raises the alarm on the other side. It's just a kind of experiment of a kind of text adventure that I don't think I've ever really seen. And one of the Quest users, who again I hope won't mind me showing a demo that he sent me privately, has been doing a similar kind of thing, also with a kind of a split screen idea, which also has something of a sort of, I suppose, a sciencey kind of thing. Experiment 1. Setting test object into experimental assembly. And here we go, and on the left hand side you're in a bright room. You can go north and east. Okay, let's, oh, I've got water on my top, that's not good. North. Object reacts regular. I mean, that's pretty much all this game does, but I think it's kind of a nice idea, just kind of showing that actually if you kind of try breaking away from thinking of text adventures as a purely kind of console mode thing and just trying to think, what can I do with words that people read, and if I have just a bit of fluidity and flexibility in how these are laid out, what kinds of things can we do? And these are just some initial experiments by me and other people, and I don't know. I'm not a writer, and as I say, I'm fairly ignorant about how a lot of other kind of games have worked, but I just feel that there is so much experimentation that can be done with HTML and JavaScript. I mean, you can animate things in JavaScript pretty easily, so I could imagine actually having a different just kind of screen layout for different scenes in the game. And I think John was talking yesterday about the idea of creating like an interactive graphic novel, and I can see having some kind of HTML JavaScript for that would be kind of ideal, because then it's immediately cross-platform, works on the web, you can package it up using PhoneGap to build apps and that kind of thing. So yes, so I mean really I suppose this is just an appeal for people to kind of get involved and think about the kind of stuff they can do. If you are interested in kind of helping out and coming up with some stuff, one of the easiest things you can do is actually submit a translation. It's probably the easiest and quickest way of getting involved. Quest, as I say, it's a free and open source project, and so really I'm kind of relying on the community to get involved and suggest stuff and try things out. Currently 7 languages: English, French, German, Spanish, Dutch and Esperanto. There's not actually very many games written in any of those, especially Esperanto. There's one in German on the site which I quite like to play, but unfortunately I don't speak German. It's called Boomerang Jack, and it's based on like Indiana Jones or something like that, which sounds quite fun. And it's quite simple. As I say, Quest has sort of XML kind of game format, and that extends to the kind of core library, which, as I sort of explained earlier, is what kind of powers a lot of the Quest functionality. So all of the default text is in there, and you can kind of edit that. So that's what the English one looks like, and then the German one is just replacing all that text with German. If you create scripts for maybe some common functionality that you think would be useful in other people's games, then you can create your own libraries and put those up on the site, and those libraries can actually tap into the visual editor. What I'm trying to show here is there's some XML from a library file which looks like that in the desktop version of the editor and looks like that in the web version of the editor. So any kind of Quest functionality that you write in Quest is immediately accessible to everybody, no matter what platform they're using Quest on. And that's kind of basically it, conveniently leaving about 10 minutes for questions. So thanks very much. Yes?
Can you give objects behavioral patterns, like for example have them move around? A lot of the info conventions have characters acting in the world on their own, no matter whether you interact with them or not.
Yeah, so there's actually a couple of ways you can do that. You can have scripts that run at regular intervals. You can have scripts that run every sort of 10 seconds or whatever, which I think a lot of people probably frown upon in a way, because I think a lot of people expect they can load up a text adventure, and if they come back to it, if they leave it in a browser tab or something, if they come back an hour later, they want to find some apocalyptic scenario where the whole world has just been destroyed. So it's often fairer to use, what Quest has is something called turn scripts, which is just scripts that run every turn. So you could do anything you liked in that, if you want to move any objects around or whatever, you can do that.
Actually, Infocom did do just that once, AutoZone, that in real time.
If
you couldn't type quickly, you were slightly screwed.
Yes, which is
Quest as well, actually. In the game that I wrote, there's a real time thing there. I made it forgiving enough that you can type slowly and still do it.
Yeah, as I say, it's something you can do. I mean, as I say, I think there's still a lot of experimentation, but I think when people have done time-based text adventures in the past, I think that's often looked upon as a bit unfair to the player, as I say, because if they go off and make some coffee to settle down, this is going to be a really good game, and what has happened? Stop. Yes, John.
Obviously, loads of puzzles are about changing the state of objects. How do you handle that in your because the editor is so kind of visual and boxy, but how do you deal with the plate which could be, I don't know, dirty or broken or scribbled on, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean you can do things, probably the usual way of doing that in Quest is to use something called flags. So any object can have any number of arbitrary attributes you want, and you can attach a flag, which is essentially a Boolean attribute to say this plate is broken or whatever, and then your scripts can say if the plate has the broken flag then do this, otherwise do that. But it's totally flexible because attributes can also be strings, numbers, they can be scripts as well, so you can start attaching different scripts to different objects and things like that.
Can you generalise that kind of thing?
Yes, as in apply it to multiple objects at once. Yeah, so there's what I've confusingly called in Quest types, although they're more like kind of classes in a way. You can apply those to objects. So like if you have common functionality for an object that can be eaten, you might add that in as an edible type, and then you could apply that to an apple, a bird or whatever. You could then have that object itself overriding some of the attributes from that type. You can then use that to build up a whole kind of set of behaviours for that object. Anybody else got any questions? Yes?
Do you follow the annual interactive fiction competition? I see the 28 entries this year, unfortunately, there was only one.
Yeah, there's generally only like one or, I think, yeah, there's only, I think in the past like 5 years there's maybe been like 2 or 3 different quest entries, which I'm not overly kind of happy about. I think in a way, I don't know, just the way that that competition works, it's almost like it's more of an inform and tags competition than it is kind of expanded more broadly. I mean, I don't think because like Choice of Games, for example, have quite a community of their own doing kind of multiple choice stuff, but I don't think they get involved in the IFCOM. Although it's sort of described as an interactive fiction competition, it's really, I think, generally in the past has only been for like one particular kind of community within interactive fiction in a way. And what I have found is, because Quest has its own forums and its own kind of community there's actually not much of an overlap, I suppose inevitably, between like the Quest forum and forums that are about essentially other systems. So I don't know, I would really love for there to be more of a real, full kind of community feel. But yeah, as it is, most like Quest users don't seem to enter the IFComp, and a lot of people who like review games in the IFComp look at a Quest game and think, what hyperlinks, panes where I can click stuff, what's this? This isn't a text adventure, this is an interactive fiction. Yeah. So I don't know, I think some people can be a bit dismissive, but
I mean, last year there was an entry called The Play.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
I didn't really play very much, but yes, it is. Yeah, and that's not an informal test. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's a slightly different interface, but it's a lot closer to the sort of interface you're going for there, and that actually did do really well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it was a very well thought out test.
Yeah, exactly. But I think if people that are using Quest aren't entering the competition in the first place, then it's kind of. Oh, of course I do.
This competition starting.
Yeah, I do. But yeah. Anybody else got anything to add?
I mean, talking about the sort of flash totals, have you had any inspiration from earlier engines? I mean, one, if anyone else would like to be old enough to remember, the Quill, the Commodore 64?
Yeah, I mean,
just some of the same features you were talking
about.
Yeah,
well actually I do get emails from people saying, oh, I used to use the Quill back in the 80s, and this is kind of the closest thing that I found to a modern equivalent. I mean, I've never used the Quill, and I never used to use a text adventure engine. When I was sending text adventures to my friend Martin, we were just hard coding them in QBasic, and so didn't really know about any of that kind. So yeah, when I started Quest, I was pretty ignorant about what else existed anyway. I just kind of thought, well, this is how I think a text adventure game engine should be, so I'm going to make that, and that's kind of the approach that I continue to take in a way. Although I've ripped off, when like Inform has quite a nice feature.
Inspired by.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, I think Inform has a feature that lets you kind of test a game by basically putting in all the different turns that you need to win it, and I just completely copied that in Quest. There's a walkthrough feature, so you can have these kind of branching walkthroughs which you can then play back to test if your game still works and stuff like that. So yeah, limited inspiration from other things sometimes. Yeah.
And can we think that this kind of game could be multiplayer? Like when I think about iPhone and all these things.
Yeah, I think multiplayer is very, very interesting. Actually, back about 7 or 8 years ago, I did experiment a bit. There was a multiplayer version of Quest actually, but it never really kind of took off because nobody really ever wrote a game for it because who was the audience going to be? And I was saying, well, I was sat on a panel here yesterday, and this question came up about multiplayer adventure games. I think there is definitely potential for multiplayer games, but I think it's going to require some experimentation. I think probably the flaw with the multiplayer Quest model that I dabbled with before was it was this kind of traditional multiplayer approach, just the same as you'd get in Call of Duty or multiplayer Quake or something like that, where everybody's playing the same game at the same time. And I'm sure there is something that we could do with multiple players, but it may not involve actually them playing the same game at the same time. Maybe it involves them having their own separate kind of game worlds, but they kind of interact somehow, like if two players have been to the same point, then maybe they can see that other people have been there or something like that, or maybe something turn-based or...
the doctor-patient one that you had?
Yeah.
Too. I could almost see that being 3 or 4, and and then everyone's a different player.
Yeah.
But you can see everyone's actions, so you could do things that might affect.
Yeah, and maybe to do that in a kind of a turn-based kind of way, because I think, you know, I don't play really any games, to be honest. The only kind of games I play are the silly little ones on my phone. I quite like playing things like Scramble with friends and stuff like that. It's kind of turn-based, and so you play it for a couple of minutes one day, and then you get a notification that says, you know, it's your turn. I could see that that kind of thing might work for some kind of text-based.
You played Jason Rohrer's games. Jason Rohrer's a well-known indie developer. He made something called Passage and then Gravitations, and he also made another game. It's got some title in German that I can't remember. But it means something along Sleep is Death, and that was a two-player asynchronous storytelling game. Where you had one person as a narrator and one person as a player. It might be worth looking at that to see how, either I haven't played it, so I can't speak from experience, but I know that caused a lot of interest in, you know, indie art gaming circles. Yeah, I mean, I suppose my problem is, you know, I'm not a writer, as evidenced by the fact that it has taken me 14 years to not write a game using my own system. To be fair, Chris Jones is the same. Yeah. Chris Jones, who made AGS, has got a similar story. He made an engine and never got around to it. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think I really want to kind of support people that want to do interesting things in text games, but I can't do all the interesting things that there are to do in text games. So I mean, partly really my point of talking to you today really is just to try and inspire you, but maybe get you just to think differently and see what the potential is in text-based games, and then hopefully see that Quest is a platform that can help you to do that, because it is free and it's open and you can kind of play around with it. So I want to kind of, you know, and if you've got an idea, then yeah, please email me and I'll do everything I can. You know, I'm working full time on this again now. I've just finished some contract work, so you know, for the next sort of 6 months or so, then you know I'm available to do anything questy really. So if you've got some nice ideas, then yeah, get in touch and I'll do everything I can to kind of help you out to bring those to reality really. Yes.
How important is the command line when you just do text adventures? I mean, is that something we should protect, or something that we can just lose as you get clicky and hyperlinky in?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think some people are quite protective of it and sort of think that if you don't have a command line, then it's not a text adventure. But I don't know. I think that's again just kind of restricting yourself to thinking, well, that was how games worked in the 80s. I mean, ideally, especially if you're doing a game for a phone, because I tweaked that first game, Things That Go Bump in the Night. When I released Tim Hamilton's game for the iPhone, because I wanted people to be able to play it without having to type in anything, because typing in things on a phone is really annoying. And I wanted people to just be able to kind of tap on links and choose from the verbs that came up. I mean, it's still difficult. It's still, you know, plenty of people told me, well, they played and they got stuck, you know, and that's even with, you know, you don't have any kind of guess the verb kind of problems or anything like that. So I don't think it's an essential part of a game. I think for some kind of games, then, you know, maybe you don't want to show a list of all the things that you can do on an object. Maybe you do want the player to have to think a bit more about what they do. One of the apps that I'm going to be releasing soon is one of the games on the website actually, which is quite a dark kind of horror game called First Times, and it's one of the sort of top 10 games if you go on the website there. The guy that wrote that has disabled hyperlinks in his game because you have to do some quite nasty, disturbing things to the things that you find. And so I think that in a way kind of works better just exclusively being controlled through typing things in and not using hyperlinks. So I think it's up to the author, but again, it's an area that's up for experimenting with it. Yeah.
And also taking away the command line takes away one thing which I think is very important, the ability to actually play with language in a game. I remember one piece of interactive fiction, I can't remember the name of the piece, which was when you entering a magician's house and getting an object from the magician's house, but each room limits what you can actually type in this room. There is a room, for example, where all words you're using must start with the letter A. You're not allowed to use the letter E in any of your words.
Yeah.
But you still get to somehow move through this house. So if the door is to the east, and you may not use E in any of your commands, or walk east doesn't work. So how do you do this? And actually puzzling your way through this with limitations of language is one thing you couldn't do without a command line.
But yeah, you could totally do that. But and maybe if you were implementing a game like that in Quest, maybe that's only one part of it. I mean, you can turn all of the user interface elements on and off at will in Quest. So you could turn off the command line if you wanted to, but then maybe turn it on and then have no links at that point in the game if you wanted to kind of mix and match. I mean, that's totally up to you guys.
Yeah, did you ever play Lord of Bert and Make Little Terrorist by Protocol? That was entirely based around wordplay.
Right.
There was a section where everything was jacks of some sorts. What are spoonerisms?
Yeah.
You had to work out the spoon and switch things around. The chapter entirely based around well-known sayings. And wordplay was actually key. You couldn't do that in a point-and-click type of indie home.
Yeah, totally. So as I say, yeah. There's no. I don't think there's no one right UI for a game, as I suppose what I kind of mean. Yeah, and Quest gives you the flexibility to have quite different UIs in as appropriate for your game. Yes, Tom.
I was going to say, I think generally though, I think you really want to lose the typing big text console. I think it's important for a very small number of things like the wordplay that you guys talk about, but from a commercial point of view and from a design point of view, like having to fight the interface, that is not good design. That is really poor design. And so I think what I particularly liked about Quest was the emphasis on hypertext links, and also it's quite good to get into the internet. It's quite good to teach you sort of programming concepts as well. I found actually from using it, which is good for me. But like as opposed to Inform, where most things have to be typed, but that is annoying, like I said these days. And also, like I think a lot of people want to play text adventure on their iPad. However, where you've got a bigger hit area, a phone is quite small, so that's the issue there. On something like a tablet, even 7-inch or upwards, like you've got a bigger hit space, so it's easier to tap those links. People would like to play these kind of things, but they don't want to have to fight the interface.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think the way to go is definitely. And now that the right click in the menu like that wasn't there when I made my game. So it's an extra feature you had to bolt into it, but now it's integral. That really makes a massive difference.
Yeah, and it makes it very accessible. As I say, I've sat 8-year-old kids down in front of Escape from Byron Bay. I don't need to tell them the kind of things that they can type in. I mean, I've seen some kind of cheat sheets that people have created for how to play a text adventure, and here's some commands you might type in. You don't need any of that with the hyperlink approach, and also because it still combines hyperlinks with typable commands. When you click a hyperlink, you see the command that it is kind of putting in for you. So it is in a way then actually teaching you about the kind of things you can type in. So it's it's making them quite intuitive. And you're right about like tablets. Tablets are the perfect device for these kind of things. As I was saying, you can snuggle up in bed, or you sit on a tube with a tablet and play a text-based game. Maybe just take it out for 5 minutes on your way to work or whatever. You can't really do that with most other kinds of games. So I think that it does. I think it fulfills.
The good things about text adventures, the moment it creates some behaviour, it's what people like.
The
good thing is not bashing your head against a brick wall trying to work out how to use an object.
Obviously you've done loads of stuff with the hyperlinks and the menus, and I think that kind of UI button is really good, but have you considered doing any of the stuff towards actually making the command line a more pleasant experience to use, by which I mean kind of being able to parse more varied syntax and being able to fix people's spelling errors, and like when people do type things wrong and make mistakes, like not classic text adventure design is to leave the error message sitting there on the screen for all time to literally insult the player as to how stupid they were, until you lose all the real game text. I mean, have you tackled any of those?
I've not really gone into that in much depth, no, but I think there's quite a lot of things you can do with JavaScript and stuff like that. In fact, somebody the other day was showing me a little demo that they just knocked up, not in any system, but just a pure kind of JavaScript. Here's some interesting things we can do to a text box, and it was essentially just helping out with autocomplete basically. So if you start typing like L-O, it fills in look, and then it knows that an object generally comes after that, so then the autocomplete list is the objects. And I think because your UI is fully JavaScript, that's the kind of possibility that you can open up. But I've not experimented with that myself, but maybe one of you can. It's all the code is there for you, and you can take it, you can then wrap it up and build your own commercial game with it, and actually keep that fork that you create to yourself if you want. It's quite a permissive license, it's not GPL or anything annoying like that, so you can really just take it and do whatever you like with it.
Sorry, I thought this was probably better.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming, and those are my contact details there.